United States President applauds Nigeria's war against terrorism, promises support in that regard.
Federal government reiterates new vision to improve narrative of Niger Delta region.
National Assembly begins 3-day public hearing on 2017 budget estimate.
Through this engagement and others to come, we hope to increase the efficiency of government and its responsiveness to citizens' needs.
Today on Good Morning Nigeria, we focus on the country's troubled airlines.
Well, the aviation sector has been facing difficult moments over time, and this situation does not seem to be having its own respite, despite some measures.
All right, now the prevailing economic condition of the country, which has affected the fortunes of individuals and organizations, is said, of course, to have also contributed to the latest development in the aviation subsector.
Well, part of this issues that we're talking about led to the sacking of the management of some airlines in the country and their subsequent taking over by the Assets Management Corporation of Nigeria, AMCON.
Well, AMCON says that Arik Airlines, which accounts for 55% of Nigeria's passenger traffic and is therefore the largest airline in the country, is too important to be allowed to collapse.
For AMCON, it also said the taking over of the airline, that is Arik Airline, is due to a huge debt burden, which has made the company unable to pay staff salaries as well as maintain its aircraft and its list. And there are also signs that it will eventually lead to the collapse of the airline, just like many others in the past.
Well, AMCON's action of taking over the management of Arik Airline has, however, generated mixed reactions from both within and outside the aviation industry, with the management of the airline signifying its intention to challenge AMCON's decision in court.
Well, the story of Arik is one of so many issues and challenges facing the aviation sector. And of course, airlines being the backbone of aviation, we should know that this is a very worrisome situation for those who should know. Well, it happened that the bailout was given to this sector a couple of years ago. So why do we still have airlines collapsing easily in Nigeria's space, or at least management? And how long should this continue in our nation? This is Good Morning Nigeria. Welcome to the program. My name is Blessing Abu.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join Blessing, also welcoming you to this edition of the program, reaching you as always live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, which is Africa's largest TV network. Now, in the course of today's program, as always, we bring you our companion segments, including newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and others. In the meantime, we're going over to the newsroom, and our guide to the news this morning is Anne Jibuno. Hi, Anne.
Hello, Kingsley, and good morning, Blessing. Good morning. Here's the news. We begin from London, where President Muhammadu Buhari has spoken to President Donald Trump on telephone at the request of the American president. The conversation was cordial, and President Buhari congratulated Trump on his election as President of the United States and on his cabinet. The two leaders discussed ways to improve cooperation in the fight against terrorism through the provision of necessary equipment. President Trump encouraged President Buhari to keep up the good work he's doing and also commended him for the efforts made in rescuing 24 of the Chibok girls and the strides being taken by the Nigerian military. President Trump assured the Nigerian president of U.S. readiness to cut a new deal in helping Nigeria in terms of military weapons to combat terrorism. President Trump also invited President Buhari to Washington at a mutually convenient date. The federal government has reiterated determination for a new vision to restore growth and improve the narrative of the Niger Delta region. Acting President Yemi Osinbajo gave the assurance at an outreach meeting with the people of the Niger Delta in Port Harcourt, Rivers State. The acting president expressed the federal government's determination to ensure healthy living conditions and empowerment programs for youth in the region.
What the government is determined to do is to change the current narrative of Nigeria merely being a country that exports crude. We want to ensure that other parts of the economy contribute their share and add value to oil and gas resources.
The role of leadership in determining the course of development of the nation, especially in times of crisis, is critical if the people are to emerge stronger and united. Acting President Yemi Osinbajo stated this at a memorial lecture to mark the 41st anniversary of the death of General Murtala Ramat Mohammed.
And so we need a new tribe in Nigeria, men and women from all tribes and regions who believe in hard work, integrity, merit, truth and justice, men and women prepared to fight corruption and ethnicity, men and women who are prepared to put the national enterprise first.
And a cross-section of Nigerians at the annual Murtala Mohammed lecture spoke to our correspondent about the legacy of late General Murtala Mohammed 41 years after his demise.
If he looks at Nigeria, is this the Nigeria of his dream? Would he be happy seeing Nigeria as it is today?
Well, I would say yes, to a certain extent. I think you heard Governor Shettima speak, and I think you can begin to see that the tide is beginning to turn once again. And really, at the end of the day, what did General Mohammed believe in? It is about excellent and exemplary leadership.
I think we should be grateful to God, the legacy he left behind, the ideals for which he fought, the vision he had about the greatness of Nigeria. I think we should flog ourselves severally for having done so badly and so poorly. However, and as I said, the great thing about this country is that, one, we're still together. Two, we've put the greatest disaster after the Civil War, that is Boko Haram, we put it behind us.
Murtala Mohammed is someone that is among the good leaders of Nigeria. So we can learn some things from what we were taught today.
Well, the leadership of the National Assembly says it is committed to ensuring that the budget process in Nigeria is more transparent and all-inclusive. President of the Senate, Senator Bukola Saraki, and Speaker of the House of Representatives, Yakubu Dogara, made the commitment at the opening of a public hearing on the 2017 budget. They explained that the public hearing was based on the need to inject public input into the budget process to achieve better results.
Through this engagement and others to come, we hope to increase the efficiency of government and its responsiveness to citizens' needs, as well as improve the overall transparency and accountability in government.
The National Assembly has not only the power, but also the duty to exercise legislative control over federal expenditure.
Minister of State Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, stressed that the 2017 budget is designed to encourage all-inclusive growth, ensure food security, housing, job creation, and reduce leakages in running government. The National Hajj Commission of Nigeria is working towards attaining financial autonomy by the year 2018. Chairman of the commission, Abdullahi Mukhtar Mohammed, said this while presenting licenses for Hajj operations to 20 states in Abuja. Nahun wants states to explore the opportunities available towards attaining financial autonomy.
Our target is to use the license as an instrument where we will ginger the state to compete among themselves in providing the right infrastructure.
Former President Goodluck Jonathan has expressed his support for the People's Democratic Party to go back to a direct system of conducting primaries with some modifications to ensure proper management of the members. He stated this when some members of the party's Strategic Review and Inter-Party Affairs Committee visited him in Abuja. The team was led by Professor Jerry Ghana.
Strategies of ensuring that the party is not only revived, energized, but effectively, as it were, moving to mobilize.
Director General of the Nigerian Television Authority, Yakubu Ibn Mohammed, says recession cannot be an impediment to growth and development of the country. NTA's Director General was speaking during his visit to the Niger State Governor, Abubakar Sani Bello, in continuation of the Director General's visit to state governors across the country. Dauda Mohammed reports that the Director General, while commending the strides made by the Niger State government, assured of NTA's continued collaboration with the administration.
Government owned, but there are states to serve primarily the government and people of those states. NTA is therefore, by implication, the property of the government and people of Niger State. And the Niger State government is a critical stakeholder in the fortunes of NTA.
For Nigeria, I'm proud of NTA. The media NTA. We're seeing very clear pictures.
Well, that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Blessing and Kingsley after this break.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt. Remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Limited, a subsidiary of the Nigerian Television Authority, specializes in creating comfort in all areas of life, such as real estate investments, that is, land, houses, and office spaces, mast leasing, savings and loan scheme, household items and car loans, and so much more. Other information and entertainment services include Property in Style, a TV program that airs on the network service of the NTA, and also Property Connect, a nationwide magazine. Our priority is to bridge poverty gaps and sustain the welfare of our clients. Partner with us and watch us help you grow. Pay us a visit today at the NTA headquarters permanent site, Area 11 Gariki, Abuja, or our Lagos office at number 15 Awolowo Road, Ikoyi, Lagos. For more information, visit our website on www.ntaproperties.com.ng, or you can email us on ntappeak2000@yahoo.com. Call us on 080-2316-3474 or 080-6939-5155 or 070-3189-0555. NTA Properties Investment Limited, the much needed help at your doorstep.
The program is Good Morning Nigeria. For our business reports, government to receive a boost as federal government intensifies effort to diversify the economy and battle recession. Plus, Nigerian Stock Exchange opens the week in the red. Details with Leah Katumba Batunde.
The federal government says it has set aside 51 billion naira in this year's budget to promote the development of the garment and textile industry in the country. The allocation is part of measures aimed at boosting the sector to create jobs, support diversification, and increase the patronage of made in Nigeria wares. Minister of State for Industry, Trade and Investment, Aisha Abubakar, says the federal government was mindful of the importance of that sector and had decided to dedicate 3 out of the 6 special economic zones to be created this year to it.
We need to identify what exactly is made in Nigeria. So we're talking about local content, we're talking about value addition, and it's going to be a gradual process. But it's all about our mind.
Nigerian entrepreneurs at various segments of the cotton, textile, and apparels value chain is designed to sharpen their skills, to make them more competitive, to produce high-quality apparels.
The Nigerian cotton, textile and garment industry in the 1970s up to the 90s was reputed to be an employer of about 1.5 million persons through the value chain, as raw materials was mostly sourced locally, and an exporter of an estimated 30% of its production, with 124 companies in existence. Data from the National Bureau of Statistics (NBS) show that Nigeria spent about 24 billion naira on importation of textile between July and September 2015. Nigeria's internet subscriptions stood at 91.9 million in December 2016, representing a year-on-year contraction of 5.3%. The latest data released by the NCC, the industry regulator, showed density of 50% in a population estimated at 185 million, placing Nigeria well above the African average of around 16% as estimated by McKinsey. Internet service providers that offer fiber optic broadband services are gradually gaining momentum. Due to the reliable data speed offered, most corporates utilize their services, and there seems to be a growing trend for residential usage as well. The federal government targets to achieve 30% broadband penetration by 2018, up from its current level of 21%. Finally, the Nigerian Stock Exchange resumed the week on a bearish note, with the all-share index dipping by 0.38%. Next is a graphic summary. That wraps business news for this hour. Thank you for watching.
All right, thank you very much. Package. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be looking at the headlines in today's newspapers.
Call of change, stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. So let the change begin from within. Look at you, Ogeruola. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins. Change begins with
me. Kilo dey by go. Make the whole Africa begin to dey talk. You no go figure this one o. Make you still dey look for another. Talkstuff.com na app wey be say e don arrange everything wey concern social media for you for inside one app. Check am now. Make you kiaka go sign up sharparly on top talkstuff.com. Talk dey cheap. Make your own dey go.
All right, now it's time for us to take a look again at the headlines in today's newspapers. And Bayo Atoyebi is right here with us for today's edition. Bayo, morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning. Good morning. Blessing, you look in Valentine colors today. Good morning, Nigeria.
I see a touch of Valentine on you as well, Bayo. Okay, let's start off. Kingsley?
All right, yes, let's take a look at the front page of the Punch newspaper, which is our first. Trump calls Buhari and hails federal government's anti-terror war. Also there on the front page, how I helped ex-Naval Chief Umar divert 13.3 billion naira. That's according to a witness. And federal government targets 5 trillion naira from asset sales. That story is also inside. Now, two earpiece stories there. Southwest governors brainstorm on agri security and uniform education. And NEMA to receive 400 Nigerians stranded in Libya. Now, the lead story says with a kicker, 552 billion naira Paris Club loan refund. Governors summon emergency meeting over EFCC probe. And then you can see the photograph on the front page there, the scene of an accident involving a tanker that caught fire. 2 killed, 31 vehicles burnt in Lagos tanker fire. Those are the photographs you're seeing there on the front page. Now, also at the foot of the front page of the Punch, PDP will bounce back in 2019, says Jonathan, that's former president. And Valentine fever grips celebrities despite recession. And ICPC recovered 8.7 billion naira loot and 124 stolen vehicles in 2016. Once again, ICPC recovered 8.7 billion naira loot and 124 stolen vehicles in 2016. Listen.
Yes, Kingsley. For the Nigerian pilots, we have several headlines there. But I'll start off with what should be a worrisome situation for the business. And right there are the National Assembly public hearing budget 2017 estimate yesterday. There was a public hearing. And here, a former director with CBN said ex-CBN boss, 20% currency in circulation fake. That with two riders, civil society's 151 billion naira frivolous proposals in 2017 budget, as well as economic disaster looms. It's coming from experts. 20% currency circulation fake. That story you find on page 6. But just above that, you have these two items. Blame Sharif for emergence of Boko Haram. This is coming from Governor of Borno, Governor Shetima. But that story is on page 4. To page 5, 2019, Ekweme urges Igbos to run for presidency. Still on the front page of the Nigerian pilot, you find the story, bird flu hits Plateau, kills 11,000 birds. That story is on page 4. Terrorism, federal government to establish military industrial complex in Kaduna. That's what you find on page 8. For pages 6 as well as 4, two other stories on page 4. You find Oshibajo in Rivers lays foundation for projects. I visited Buhari in London but won't talk about his health. It's coming from Ogun State Governor Ibikunle Amosun. Governor Ahmed Okey's construction of Quranic Memorization Center in Kwara. That story is on page 4. And how to stop hijack of party primaries. Former President Goodluck Jonathan gives this advice. Okay, Bayo, before we go to other papers that we have.
Well, let me start with the human interest story that Kingsley started with. A tanker conveying petrol spilled its contents along Apapa Road. And as usual, our people never seem to learn from this. Area boys gathered and were scooping. Some other people tried to drive them away, pointing out the danger from them. As one of them was running away, he dropped his container, and then there was fire. And it trailed the spill up to the tanker, and the tanker exploded. Unfortunately, the tanker fell near a mechanic's workshop. They have 50 cars belonging to their customers in that workshop, and the firefighters were able to save only 31. 21 cars got burnt. 2 persons were also killed there. I think we need to learn whenever this unfortunate incident happens. Looking for cheap petrol means looking for cheap life, sadly. The other story is the alarm raised that 20% of the currencies in circulation are fake. And this was revealed by a former deputy governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Obadiah Melafia, and he says that bad money chases away good money. He was actually addressing the first public hearing ever by the National Assembly on the budget. And he also advised against any increase in rates and taxes because he says such will compound the problems in the economy. He said that the hardship on Nigerians will be compounded by such increase in rates and taxes. This is the first public hearing ever, and at its opening, the Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, said the essence is to engage critical stakeholders to make input into the 2017 budget. This is hoped to increase efficiency of government, responsiveness of citizens, and transparency and accountability in governance. Also, Speaker Yakubu Dogara also said that the joint public hearing was a commitment of the 8th National Assembly to reform the budget process. He says a coalition of civil society organizations also raised an alarm. They said the platform, there were frivolous, wasteful allocation worth about 151 billion naira, and they enjoyed the National Assembly to expunge that off. They also pointed out that the budget of the National Assembly, which was put at 115 billion, is too high and should be reduced to 110 billion.
All right, let's return to the papers. New Telegraph. Some of the headlines on the front page of the New Telegraph are similar to what we read already, including the lead story, which says how ex-air chief siphoned 13.2 billion in 2 years. That's with a rider. AVM Umar bought 2.4 billion naira houses in Abuja and Kano. That's according to a witness in his ongoing trial. Details of the story can be found on page 4. Now, immediately below the name flag of New Telegraph, you still have the story on the Buhari-Trump telephone conversation. U.S. will cut a new deal with Nigeria, invites President to Washington. And Nigeria needs $140 billion to fight global warming. That's according to the World Bank. Details of that story on page 4. Boko Haram, that's the kicker. 100,000 killed and 2 million displaced. That's according to Shetima. Details of that story can be found. These stories I'm reading are from the New Telegraph, immediately below the nameplate.
Okay, for the Daily Trust, I have these stories. They're leading for the Daily Trust. Buhari to meet Trump over security and economy. Then there is a writer to that story. It's crazy to say I didn't visit president in London, says Asiwaju Bola Tinubu. That story starts right there but continues on page 6. And the memorial for late head of state, the Murtala Mohammed, is the photograph you have there. Of course, the individuals from the left, of course, you have the son of the late head of state, Rizwan Mohammed, son-in-law, Gbenga Oyebode, the daughter and others. Of course, the acting president of the Federation is there. Also, we have other stories just below the photograph there. Federal government names new prosecutor for Justice Nguta's trial. 2019, PDP remains Nigeria's strongest party. This is coming from former President Jonathan. 20% of money in circulation, fake. We've already taken that item. But just below a nameplate for the Daily Trust, you have the KPMG to audit ARIC's finances. Of course, troubled airline, and that is our focus today on the program. Good morning, Nigeria. Bayo.
Yes. The President Donald Trump has reportedly called President Muhammadu Buhari, and according to the special advisor to President on Media, Femi Adesina, they had cordial conversation. President Trump encouraged President Muhammadu Buhari to keep up the good work, to quote the media special assistant. He commended the president for rescuing of 24 Chibok girls, and he assured Nigeria of U.S.'s help with military weapons to combat terrorism. The other story was the acting president's visit to the River State. He says the federal government is determined to change the story of the Niger Delta from one of agitation and restiveness over neglect of the region. The vice president clearly declared that Niger Delta needs a new vision. He says a renewed spirit by all stakeholders was necessary, and we must make oil-producing communities the hub for petrochemical production. The acting president was received by the Governor Nyesom Wike, and Governor Nyesom Wike declared that there will be unallied support for the federal government in developing the Niger Delta region.
All right, just before we close, Bayo, Daily Sun, the lead story from Daily Sun says with a kicker, recovered loot, 1 billion naira, whistleblower rejects compensation. Details of the story can be found on page 13. The disclosure of the rejection of the compensation is according to the paper to the the Minister of Information and Culture. Now, also there on the front page of the Daily Sun, just at the foot of the front page below the photograph, Akpo 6, police officers no fate next month. That's on page 8 in greater detail. So,
that's very altruistic. He rejected the employer fee, which is the range between 2.5 to 5%.
That's right.
He did it for altruistic and nationalistic purposes.
National interest. But
however,
the commercial bank where the money was found is not been named.
Okay. However, a doctor had to learn a hard way. He had a lady friend, took her to a hotel, and while he was taking his bath, the lady got him a malt and yogurt drink. And by the time he took the drink, he slept from 2 p.m. and didn't wake up until the next day. By the time he woke up, his car key was gone, his laptop was gone, his phones too were gone. When he asked at the reception, they said the lady said she has taken the car to go and buy food. The lady was arrested later on RRS. People arrested her, and she has since squealed. It was, in fact, the 3rd time she was using that strategy to steal vehicles, which she cut away to the Delta State.
And I've got the Met on the internet, or the dating site on the internet. I'll get into the details. Anyhow, thank you for being with us. Today we'll see you again tomorrow.
Tomorrow will be another day. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with Nigeria's troubled aviation sector.
Love is in the air, and your rib-cracking comedy series, Professor John Bull, examines the follies, the foibles, and the realities of Valentine's Day.
My baby Flash will fly like a dash of awesome cash. My heart is loving you today, no clash.
I'm here to take my baby out for a bash, man. It's Valentine. We're going to wine and dine, man.
What is love to Carol?
If you give Carol this thing, he will insult you.
You know nothing about love.
You must not shop some things to buy there.
What is love to Professor John Bull?
Love is like a fire. Handle it well, it can light up your life. Handle it carelessly, it can burn you to death.
Find out how love swings in Be My Vow episode of Professor John Bull.
The love I get for you, even me self the fear. Samu, as you are strong, you don't love girl like that.
Professor John Bull, laugh like never before.
Over.
Brought to you.
Okay, sir. You may now go in for your interview.
Thank you. Ah, my shoe. And to think I just bought this very expensive foreign shoe 2 months ago.
So sorry about your shoes. This is why I advise my friends to always patronize made in Nigeria products. See this shoe. It's made in Nigeria, and I've had it for 2 years, and it's still as good as the day I bought it.
Made in Nigeria products are good quality, and stringent government regulations and certification now mean that goods made in Nigeria meet international standards. Make the patriotic choice today. Buy right. Buy Made in Nigeria.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Yes, to set the tone for our conversation this morning, Good Morning Nigeria is taking a look, of course, at Nigeria's troubled airlines. Over the years, Nigeria's aviation sector has been passing through challenges which led to the collapse of many airlines. Although efforts have been made to rescue the airlines with the bailout funds, but the challenges seem to remain unabated. Hamid Ambali, in this background report, takes a look at the recent developments in the aviation sector with the takeover of Arik Air by Amcon to save it from total collapse.
What do the following airlines have in common? Arik Air, Air Nigeria, Okada Airlines, Sosoliso, and Cabo Air. Is it that they all operate flights to Abuja, or that they are no longer in operation? If you chose the latter, then you're right. Maybe not entirely though, as these are not the only airlines to have gone under. A 2016 media report which quotes the Secretary General, Airline Operators of Nigeria, Captain Mohammed Joji, while addressing the House of Representatives Committee on Aviation, indicates that a total of 47 airlines have gone under in Nigeria in the last 30 years. High cost of fuel, exorbitant airport rent, airspace movement charges, among others, have been identified as some of the reasons the airlines folded up. With the addition of the clear and present danger posed by foreign exchange, one begins to get a picture of the situation. It's a situation that has thrown many out of jobs, negatively affected passenger confidence in Nigeria's aviation industry, and generally left many wondering if the sector is ready to take flight. As the sector looks for better days ahead, guests on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria will be analyzing what is needed to get the Nigerian element of the aviation industry off the ground.
All right, thank you very much there, Ahmed Ambali, for that background report. Now we have guests with us here in the Abuja studios, as well as later guests who will be joining us from our Lagos Network Center. But in the meantime, with us here in the Abuja studios, we'd like to welcome Captain Roland Iyaye, former Managing Director of the Nigerian Airspace Management Agency, NAMA. Captain Iyaye, pleasure to have you join us again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Morning, thank you very much.
Okay, and then we also have with us here in the Abuja studios Captain Usman Mukhtar. Captain Mukhtar is Director General of the Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority, NCA. Captain Mukhtar, pleasure to have you join us.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right. Listen.
Okay, we'll go over now to welcome the guests in Lagos. I would like to welcome at this point Mr. Chris Aligwe. Mr. Aligwe is an aviation expert and also former image maker of the defunct Nigerian Airways. Mr. Aligwe, thank you for coming up the program.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Also in our Lagos studio, we would like to welcome Comrade Elitris Hamadu, is the National President, Transport Services Senior Staff Association, ATSSAN for short. You're welcome to the program. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right, let's begin the conversation with the guests with us here in the Abuja studios. Captain Iyaye, the prompt for this conversation, of course, is the takeover of the management of Arik Airlines by the Asset Management Company of Nigeria. Arik, before now, was the country's largest airline in terms of passenger traffic and volume that it controls, some estimates indicating 55%. But those who have used the airline in recent months knew that there was trouble in the air, particularly with that airline. So did this come as a surprise? That's one. And is it indicative of the deeper issues bedeviling the aviation sector in the country?
Thank you very much, Kinsley. Indeed, I think what has happened with Arik is something that was expected before now. Because if you take a look at the fact that AMCON actually bailed out 5 airlines several years ago, and I need to make clear that the bailout, the supposed bailout, wasn't a bailout. It was actually a debt buyout deal. Because what happened at the time, and this is principally what is wrong with most of the airlines in the country, we do not have the proper financing structures to acquire assets. Put it this way, if you have to buy an aircraft which you need to finance over a 3-year period from a local bank, this is an asset that's amortized typically over 15 years, and you have to do it in 3 years. That is tremendous pressure on the financial and on the finances of any airline. Now, what I say is airlines in Nigeria have continued to use bad money to fund good projects, in which case there's been a dislocation in the structure of funding of asset acquisition. When you use a short-term loan to finance a long-term project, that dislocation itself is a major source of pressure on your finances in the longer term. So in the case of Arik grew in a short period of time from maybe a 5-airplane airline to a 28-airplane airline. And that has meant having to acquire all these assets. Now, what is not clear is the structures that were used in the acquisition mode. Obviously, there was a dislocation, which is why AMCON had to buy out the debts from the banks that funded all these acquisitions. Yes, indeed, when you have structures that are not in alignment with what in terms of your revenues can cover, then the dislocation ultimately would manifest in a disruption. So what has happened is ARIC earned monies, but the monies earned over that period of time did not cover their operating expenses, let alone the capital expenses. So that dislocation meant it was a matter of time before ARIC would go down. The same thing happened in aero contractors. Air Nigeria was an example. Chanchangi is an example. IRS, these are the 5 airlines that AMCON bailed out, and 3 of them are no longer in existence, and 2 of them at this point are stuttering. So indeed, it was expected. Now, is this an indication of what it is the airlines in Nigeria are faced with? Yes, indeed it is. And why is that the case? Over the years, we've cataloged the issues in the airlines, the industry, to the authorities, but unfortunately, it would assume, I would assume that it's not something they see or they perceive as important. If we're overtaxed, and the airline industry is so regulated and so structured that taxing the airline industry is so easy. We pay VAT, for instance, on airline tickets. That is an aberration. You don't do that in anywhere else in the world but Nigeria.
Sorry, Captain Iyaye, yes. We know that there are complaints about some of the taxes and levies that the airlines have to pay in the country. But yes, you've touched on a very significant point, namely the financial arrangements and management of the airline industry. I would like us to thrash this out first before we now come to the other issues that affect actually how the airlines balance their books. And that's why we're going over now to Lagos Network Center. Mr. Chris Aligba, you listen to the comments the introductory comments by Captain Roland Iyaye. Now, is it necessarily the case, Mr. Chris Aligba, that we are having a challenge here in terms of, one, feasibility? In other words, before, whatever promoter is in the industry gets into the business, say, listen, excuse me, you don't work out your metrics very well, you don't work out your financials. Does it have to do with the whole mentality of those who are investing in the airline industry?
Well, thank you. There are quite a lot of challenges if you are looking at all the indices, things that contribute to the state of the industry. Yeah, you can look at what Roland has said, management, you can look at financials, you can look at the models, the various models, and something you look at and say, look, the right models are not the ones used. And then sometimes you find that those who start off these airlines are not in the airline sector as aware, and so when they are starting it, they don't know how to begin. Sometimes they put the cart before the horse. But having said that, Wilfred, what bothers me is that we have talked about the various challenges, and people think that because of the challenges, the takeover was expected. Maybe some people, many people expected the takeover, wanted the takeover, but ANCOM did. But I think that takeover is unjustifiable, that takeover is illegitimate, and that takeover will not help the country. Because a one-eyed man cannot lead another one-eyed man. Already a blind man cannot lead another one-eyed man. Because all the takeovers, all the actions of the ANCOM in the industry have not led to anywhere. Aero, when they took over Aero 5 years ago, Aero had about 7 aircraft or more. Today, Aero had about 2. You look at Air Nigeria. And so, I'm asking myself, what is the basis for ANCOM to take over? If as an asset manager, he hasn't been able to manage the assets he took over. He is almost looking like an undertaker. Again, intervening in ARIC. Yes, ARIC had problems. People wanted a change. ARIC is said to be owing 135 billion to AMCOM. What is the value of the asset? The assets of ARIC as of today. What's the value of the assets? If you put a monetary value, 4 or 5 years ago, when Lois did that valuation, it was about $4.something billion. Let's see, because of the situation, it has deteriorated to be 50% of it. Convert that to Naira and see what it is. So, ARIC is said to be owing FAN. ARIC is said to be owing NCAA. ARIC is said to be owing others. All of them now are stakeholders in ARIC. And so if you are going to do anything on ARIC, you should have to put all the stakeholders together. But for AMCON to wake up and take it up, I think is an audacity of authority. It's pure arrogance. And AMCON doesn't have what it takes to turn that place around. What ARIC needs today, like Aero, is a turnaround management. And AMCON does not even know that the people he put in place are not turnaround managers. They are not. And in as much as AMCON goes the way it is going, Nigerians should wait. Aero will collapse. ARIC will collapse. So that is not a question of rescue situation. You cannot rescue what you don't know how to rescue.
Well, Mr. Chris Aligbe, you've not exactly, you touched on part of my question, but you then veered into what you thought in your view as the unjustifiable takeover of ARIC by AMCON. And you're saying that they need turnaround managers. Now, if the current management, in the opinion of AMCON, is deemed perhaps incompetent in turning around the fortunes of the entity, what is wrong with appointing a receiver? A receiver is a manager, by the way, in law. This is not a liquidation exercise, is it?
Not a liquidation exercise. What should have been done is advertise that place to look for a turnaround management. That's what is done worldwide. If you want to rescue that place, it's not a receiver manager. If you look at what AMCON has done elsewhere, look at Bashita Sugar Company. There's a receiver there. That company has gone down, down, down. I want to know what company AMCON took over that is successful today or better than it was way before he took it over. So it's not a question of appointing a receiver manager. An organization that needs a turnaround manager, a turnaround management, get all the stakeholders, because what is owed AMCON, what is owed FAN, what is owed NCA, have made all of them, including ARIC itself, have made all of them stakeholders in ARIC. If you equitize the various values, you probably find that AMCON is not the highest in terms of equity, in terms of what is owed it. So what I'm saying is that fair is fair. Justice is justice. ARIC has its own problem. ARIC has offended a whole lot of passengers and whatever. Yes, there's public complaint, but in doing that, do what is right, do what is just. What is doing with a receiver and the kind of management, it will not rescue ARIC. ARIC will go down if we leave the present situation. And the industry will suffer about it. Nigerians will suffer about it. It's not an apology for ARIC, but I think in this country, if we don't face stark reality and say the truth, we will not get anywhere.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chris Aligbe. Still with you in Lagos there. We'll like to have the comments from Comrade Hamadu. He's the National President, Air Transport Services Senior Staff Association. Yes, Mr. Comrade Hamadu, of course, the aviation sector is bedeviled with so much myriad of issues confronting it. Let's share your burdens and what you think at the ugly sides to operating a proper aviation sector in Nigeria.
Well, thank you so much. For me, I'm not really looking at the propriety or otherwise of the takeover of ARIC by AMCON. AMCON has gone into several airlines in Nigeria. The records are there for everybody to see. Like other commentators have said, I think the most important thing at this point in time is for us to see how we can turn around the fortunes of ARIC and other airlines like Aero that AMCON is under AMCON management, so that they can get back to operations, real-time operations. My worry with the AMCON takeover is this. If you, simple analogy would dictate, if you've invested a lot of money into an airline and the airline is not doing well and you have to take over the airline, I think the best thing to do in the circumstance is to bring in the best of managements, to change the cultural practices within the airline. Because for me, a lot of the airlines are bereft in good corporate governance and management practices. You need to put in, let's take the case of Aero, for instance. AMCOM does not want to put a dime into Aero. How can the airline survive? So AMCOM has to have a rethink about the whole situation. You must put, the duty of a receiver manager is not just to liquidate and sell off the assets of the company. One of his responsibility is to see to it how he can maximize the asset, turn it around, and turn around the fortunes of the company so that it can operate as a growing concern, so they can take out their money, if anything. But we have a situation that is peculiar in Nigeria, and I must say this here, from our experience in the industry, AMCOM has not done well in the area of sourcing real-time experts to run these entities post takeover. Aviation is not, there's no reinventing the wheel in this industry. There are experts all over the world. Even if you cannot source them in Nigeria, you can go anywhere in the world. Ethiopia is selling these experts. Countries like South Africa, you can get them in Europe and any part of the world. So I do not think that it's too difficult to come up with a strategic plan that would help the airlines grow. I know very well Arik is heavily indebted, both within and outside the shores of this country. Everywhere Arik flies in, what you see is reports of indebtedness to airport authorities, to ANSPs, all over the world. So we need to look at the entire situation. This is supposed to be a rescue mission. There are jobs to be saved. And I think at this point in time, as a nation, we must be strategic. We must look inwardly to get the best for the company. And let me say, the AMCOM must give even the managing directors the free hand to contribute to this turnaround process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Ahmad. Even though I asked what other burdens, yes, the other two guests actually touched on the issue of AMCOM taking over and what they ought to do and what is still left undone. What we really want to take a look at those issues, troubling. Yes, we've started already. Captain Nayai here actually trailed off some of those areas, but we want to see why we're still not living up to those standards despite the technology that is in this sector greatly. Well, we'll have another guest joining you there in Lagos. We'd like to introduce at this point Sir Andrew Okunuga, is the Vice President of Aviation Safety Round Table Initiative, and is also a former Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer of Nigerian Airways. Mr. Okunuga, thank you very much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much.
Okay, still with you. Let's quickly have a look at what those issues are that are most critical to the sector that is not making aviation sector, airlines management generally thrive as is expected globally.
Well, having listened to my colleagues and the contribution made, as an association that I represent by coming here, we make sure that we advance the development of aviation in Nigeria, and we do this by ensuring that there is safety and promote professionalism and cooperating with government and sharing knowledge with stakeholders. That being the background, every other thing I will say now will mean that we are out there to promote, to ensure, to cooperate, and give a balanced view always on every issue concerning aviation industry. Having said that, I would say that aviation or the airlines industry in Nigeria has been problematic, and the worst came around since liquidation of Nigeria Airways. I served in Nigeria Airways for almost 30 years before getting to the helm of affairs. And most of the things we are experiencing now were there but could be managed properly. And the liquidation also added to what is going on, and recklessness in the BASA giving out to foreign airlines that will not promote the advancement and traffic pickup within Nigeria is part of what we are talking about, number one. Number two, the foundational members or the original owners of airlines are also contributing to it, because, like one of my colleagues said, they don't have much, know much about aviation industry when coming into it. They believe they can come into it, tap into it, make money, and go. It doesn't work that way. Another thing is that we must make sure as government, policy put in place that people cannot jump into airline industry anyhow. By not having enough fund or getting adequate aircraft, not these two, by policy being given out that if you have 2 aircraft, not less than 5. Most people that are investing on aviation or airline industry may not be able to begin. So the problem, and number 3 thing I would mention, is the absence of MRO, maintenance, repair, overhaul, MRO facility in Nigeria. It is a contributing factor, because all the monies, the cash made, which they see all the time, these airlines, they believe it belongs to them. Whereas one check of it, either check C or check D, we pack away all the whole thing. That is why most aircraft, when they move out of the country overseas to pay in dollars for all these checks, they don't come back, they don't have the money. Whether we should not be talking of army, but we should be looking at the global solution, general solution that will solve aviation problem. Because Nigeria Airways in the first time shouldn't have been liquidated. It required privatization. The ownership should have been changed. That is just all. And that aircraft, that airline will have been there today, and every other person will be taking a cue from the professionalism displayed by the expert of that place. You can't beat it. Even in Nigeria now, I told them sometime when I was in South Africa, when they were talking about how to run an airline, I told them we have what it takes in Nigeria to run an airline. But the environment, our environment is not conducive. What kills ARIC today? We are talking of indebtedness, we are talking of corporate governance. We are talking of recklessness and recklessness in operation and all the rest of the thing. Those are the things that professionals have to handle. It is not that because you are the owner of something, you give directive and everything should go. Those are the things we should be talking about right now. Otherwise, the remaining domestic carrier will follow suit. There will be no solution, even AMCON is there. Thank you.
All right. Andrew Kunuga, thank you very much. You touched on a number of points. We'll come back to you in the course of the conversation to elaborate further. But earlier we introduced Captain Usman Mukhtar, who's DG of NCA, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority. Captain Mukhtar, you've listened to the other guests, what they have said. Now you are the regulator of the industry. What is the extent of your regulation? Are you concerned? Do you get a red flag, for instance, if an airline is unable to meet its financial obligations? Because at the root of all this is corporate governance, mismanagement of your finances, and as Captain Iyayi has said, why use short-term funds to chase long-term assets? No matter how efficient you try to be, you get squeezed out. So what is the extent of your involvement in terms of oversight of the airline industry?
Thank you very much. The Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority regulates safety, security, and economic regulation as far as aviation is concerned. In addition to the safety and security, as I mentioned, we also look at the financial health of operators, not only the airlines, but all operators and service providers, to ensure that they meet up to the international set standards and recommended practices. Yes, we saw some things coming up, some flags, red flags, shining, and definitely we do what we have to do, and the owners of ARIC in terms of investment did what they had to do. But to summarize most of the comments we had from the other commentators, is all about lack of proper corporate governance in those organizations, and also management, bad management. Having identified those, the government in its own wisdom has commenced the process of establishing an aerospace university to address that level of manpower requirement for the country. If you remember, we have an institution set up by the United Nations through ICAO and United Nations Development this UNDP program in Zaria to produce up to middle level manpower requirement for Nigeria. That has been met, and in order to address what has been going on, that is the production of the high-level management, because it's all about management. If you manage very well, you won't run into this problem. And that's why government now has commenced the process of establishing that aerospace university to take care of these situations that we find ourselves in.
Well, Captain Usman, thanks. I'll come back to you again on the question of financial management. But Captain Iyaya, let's elaborate on the issue of corporate governance in the airline industry, for instance. Is it the case that, I mean, what you have basically are one-man businesses rather than corporate entities in the real sense of it, with a board of managing directors and shareholders who have a voice when the need arises, and managers to say board of directors and management who will say, yes, this is what we tend to do. I'm asking this question because I recall there was an airline sometime in the 80s, and the owner could give you a pass on a piece of paper, and people were using the pass to be obtaining tickets, and eventually, of course, the airline collapsed. So what is the governance structure in the airline industry? Is it amenable to real corporate governance, or is it just a one-man business, like, elevated, of course, because you have planes flying in the skies?
Thank you. Well, excuse me. Let us go back into the 80s, like you said. We had a series of airlines coming to the industry. This was about 1984 when we had the deregulation. Now, the attraction at the time, which we need to understand, the attraction at the time was the fact that in the airline business, you had two tiers of foreign exchange. In the airline business, you had the first tier of foreign exchange, which is a normal tariff. And a lot of people came into the business, got import permits to bring in aircraft, for which they got foreign exchange at the first tier. And they were able to inflate the value of that import tariff so that they could export naira in foreign exchange out of a country. Not necessarily because the monies were used to run the airline business. Now, that is a government function. So essentially what I'm saying is that the government created a conduit for people who had absolutely no business in the industry to exploit the loophole in the law to enrich themselves. Now, these same individuals, obviously, if that was the motive to have come into the industry, didn't think the airline industry was something they wanted to involve themselves in and run professionally. So that was a beginning of a problem. Now, unfortunately, when these actors came into the business, some people within government now felt there was a need to deregulate and remove Nigeria Airways from the system. By the way, when Nigeria Airways was being liquidated, it required only $127 million to recapitalize and refleet. And the assets Nigeria Airways had at the time totaled over $3 billion. However it was liquidated. So when you ask the question, how was taxpayers' money used at that time? Just like Mr. Okunuga said, it is very evident that there were interest groups and they needed to be part of this so-called largesse of government, and they did. Now, has it changed since then? I think that's a focus we need to look at. Now, people have come into the airline industry. Aside from the issues we talked about, our dislocation in funding and all the rest of it, the attraction has been and would continue to be, for as long as government provides some sort of loophole where people can, exploit to enrich themselves. People would come into the industry not for the purpose of doing the right thing, but to see how to enrich themselves. Now, all of these would be to the detriment of the industry, and it has always been. So we need to look at that as a separate issue. Now, when you now take corporate governance within the airline structures, I run an airline. I've been handicapped by several factors to the point that I had to park aircraft. Why was that? It didn't make sense to fly the airplanes because at the end of the day, I was losing more money flying the airplanes. Now, there are several factors attributed to that. Again, the DG said, well, there are things being done, middle-level manpower. I think, and I would maintain, that part of a problem we have in the industry is the issue of regulation. Either we've been over-regulated in certain areas or under-regulated in certain areas. I'll give a classic example, which is my example. When we had, we were contracted with an oil and gas company to provide services. We provided a niche market service, corporate shuttle for this particular organization. And at some point, we had a contractual dispute. Now, at the point at which we had the dispute, we notified the Civil Aviation Authority. Now, our license empowers us, for instance, to fly as a charter company. However, we had other carriers licensed to fly both as charters and as scheduled. But the point is, when a scheduled carrier would remove from scheduled service an aircraft that's already programmed to do scheduled service, to do charters, you start having delays, cancellations of flights, and nobody was talking about it. To make matters worse, we parked simply because we had a dispute. But the client now went ahead and contracted with some other airline who ended up picking out the airplane to fly on charters for 14 months. And this airline was having problems with scheduled service. And nobody did anything about it. We talked about it. Now, when we went on to say, okay, let's do a charter arrangement into Benin, for instance, which we did for 3 months, this same airline reduced the tariff from 22,000 naira to 15,000 naira to try and take us out of the market. After 3 months, I felt it was a wasted time doing that. Now, that is predatory pricing. It is something the NCAA is regulated or is empowered to regulate, but it didn't. Now, let's assume that they didn't know. I wrote to the NCAA, cataloging all these issues. They were not addressed. I got a letter back from the NCAA saying they had the rights to do it. I'm not saying they never had the rights to do it, but as a scheduled airline, you're required to have a minimum number of aircraft as surplus aircraft to ensure that you can maintain your capacity. But these were not the issues that were addressed. So again, the issue of regulation is key to success or otherwise in the sector. Where we overlook certain things, I went out of business for the simple reason that I didn't think it made sense to continue. But now I can come back because the same airlines are out of business. And that's exactly what I'm doing. So invariably, if I had to wait 2 years for these airlines to dissipate their funds, for me to be able to come back to business, it didn't have to come to that.
All right, Captain, yeah, you're fine. That's the NCA is right here, the DGs here. All of this rough play is going on, and you are supposed to be the referee. Are you looking the other way?
Most certainly not. I'm happy that Roland said we have looked at the issues and we had even responded. And I'm happy to hear that he also mentioned that the other operator had the right to do what they did. And this regulation that we have been talking about is not NCA regulation. It is regulation for the industry by the industry, because all stakeholders were involved in it. Ours is just we're the custodians to ensure that those regulations are being implemented. So I'm happy to hear that he said at least we have responded, and I will continue to respond, and we will make sure that there's no unfair competition. The essence of having choices is about competition and about reduction in price and getting good services and so on. And we'll continue to promote that as a regulatory agency.
Hey, Captain Mukhtar, still with you briefly before we go to the other guests in Lagos. One or two of them also mentioned the issue of infrastructure. And also, I think Mr. Kunuga talked about MRO, that we have to even go abroad and some of those areas. What are we doing to actually make aviation as safe as possible, which is under the purview of course, taking a look at basic infrastructure alongside other services that will be needed?
Well, thank you very much. Again, one of the major cardinal programs and actions embarked upon by the current administration is to attract MROs to be established in Nigeria. One, for us to be able to monitor standards for safety. Two, to ensure that we conserve the foreign exchange that we have. And in fact, to even attract foreign exchange inflow into the country. Take advantage of the size of the country, population, the high mobility of Nigerians in terms of Nigerians are very, very mobile. And also to take advantage of the natural position of Nigeria geographically. You know, it's within a reasonable distance to Europe, almost equidistant, Europe, South America, North America, Middle East, and so on. So to create a hub also. And towards creating that hub, it's why you need to concession those airports for increase in capacity and efficiency. And that's what government is doing. And also in the area of training, the college in Zaria is working along with the International Civil Aviation Organization to designate that college as a regional center of excellence for training in this region. You know, so a lot of things are being done to ensure that we take advantage of our natural position, our population, the high mobility, because most of the people traveling are Nigerians, even though they travel in foreign airlines and so on. And if we take advantage of the current situation and encourage and have big, strong, viable national carriers or flag carriers for Nigeria, we'll take advantage of the bilateral air service agreements that we have signed with various countries. We have not been able to fill those quotas. Foreign airlines are coming in, they are going out, and we have not been able to do. And that's why government is desirous of promoting national carriers to take advantage of those multilateral and bilateral air service agreements that have been signed.
All right, Captain Usman Mukhtar, thank you very much. Just to return to Lagos Network Studios, of course, we have at least three guests. A fourth guest we're expecting to join the team the team of guests in Lagos. Okay, we understand the fourth guest is just joining us, Captain Benson Ikmomosa of Dana Airlines. Captain Benson Ikmomosa, if you can hear me, it's our pleasure to have you join us on the program this morning.
Pleasure.
All right, but just before I pop the question to you, I want to return to Mr. Andrew Kunuga, still at the Lagos Network Center. We're talking about the MRO, which has to do with maintenance, repair, and overhaul. A facility was being built at at Uyo in Akwa Ibom State. What is the status? You have an indication of what it is that facility is up to now. Is it ready? And if it's not ready, what do you think needs to be done?
Thank you very much. I am not sure of the correct position of that Uyo facility, because if it is ready, it is the duty of the management of the place to promote it and to ensure that it gives out the capacity and capability to airlines that are operating in Nigeria so that they will have the necessary patronages. I'm not sure of the position. If it is ready, then the management should work hard to ensure that all the airlines in Nigeria and West African sub-region are notified, and then they could come and patronize them. That is what I believe should be done. I don't know the position of that particular place, whether it is ready or not.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Mr. Chris Aligbe, that's a point that I would also like you to speak to. I mean, well over 15 years ago, I was at the Johannesburg airport, and I saw South African Airways undertaking a D-check on the Lufthansa 747. And Ethiopian Airlines, they have one of the maintenance facilities. How are these two airlines able to do it? And yet, every year so often, we are burning our hard currency, flying out our jets for sea and other kinds of checks abroad.
Thank you, Wilfred. South African Airways, the history is different. When they were under apartheid, they had to make sure they established everything to take care of themselves because they were a pariah. And so that was the beginning. And when they came out of apartheid, the entire airline organization, particularly South African Airways, was brought under a turnaround situation. That's why South African government had a team of 5 turnaround managers led by Coleman Andrews from the US to turn South African Airways around. Ethiopian airline case is a different thing. Ethiopian Airlines started as an airline. It was held by TWA to start up. And then gradually it built its maintenance organization, maintenance outfit, which is world standard today. Look, a small airline, Rwandan Air just started. It's building its own. If you talk at MRO is necessary, but you cannot have an MRO without a market existing for the MRO. An MRO cannot come before major airlines exist. We carried a study of 125 maintenance yards. Only about 22 of them started without being a baby of existing airlines. So airlines must exist. If Nigerian Airways had been there, at the point we have started doing up to C checks on a 737 up to some point, half C. Okay, and we are developing along that line. Today, the MRO in Akwa Ibom is doomed. Any MRO coming today without any market is doomed. So the market must exist. MRO must grow out of an existing airline before they can come, before you can have them fledgling. So the people say no MRO. Ask them, where is the market? I won't come to establish a factory when there's no market. There is no market today to support any maintenance organization because the airlines are not there. How many aircraft do we have? MROs, some of them handle in a month up to 10, 20 aircraft, more than that. So this is one factor. So let's know which comes first, the chicken or the egg. We must make sure we have that. And then you look at other things being taught, corporate governance. One of the things that afflicts the industry today, thank God Roland Iyayi is there, is owner-manager syndrome. All the airlines we had collapsed on purely on owner-manager syndrome. Nigerian Airways, an owner-manager syndrome. It was owned by federal government, they manage it, remote control management, sometimes direct management. Okada, owner-manager syndrome. ADC, owner-manager syndrome. Bellevue, owner-manager syndrome. Sosoliso, owner-manager syndrome. Cabo, owner-manager syndrome. What is happening to Arik? Owner-manager syndrome. What is happening to, what again is happening to Aero? You heard that owner-manager syndrome. Unless we bring that, that's where the issue of corporate governance comes. All of us, those who have airlines, they are there managing it by themselves. Some of them are professionals. It doesn't matter whether we are professionals. You can be an excellent pilot, a captain. You have no iota of knowledge in terms of financials. If you are not exposed to it, you cannot handle it. That's why I wonder what advised ANCOM to put the people they have put in place in the 2 airlines they want to rescue. That's why I say those airlines will never rescued unless we get turnaround management. So if you have to get them outside, get them. Because what it will cost you to get them is by far negligent, insignificant to what you will lose without them. Let us make sure we do not allow our airlines collapse today. The aviation industry will collapse if we let the situation as it is now go the way it is going. That's my take on that.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Aligbe. Still with the Lagos studio there, Kingsley already introduced Captain Benson Iponsa, who joined us right there on the program. Now, let's beyond some of these areas that have been looked at, high costs, high charges to aviation agencies, high cost of maintenance, the owners' management issues. What other burdens with your own airline, or from your own point of view, will you say are the narratives for the industry? Captain Ponsa.
You know, these kind of discussions we're having today, it amazes me that we've had them several times in the past.
We are simply a nation that refuses to learn. And because we refuse to learn, we are condemned. We need to go back to the drawing board. We need to go back to the drawing board. A situation where all the airlines, even at commencement of operations, they are already in debt, is, come on, it's unacceptable. Even before they make the first flight of operation, their very first operation, they are in debt because the system is tagged against them. Look at the charges. I'm glad that the DG of NCA is there. FAN, NAMA. It is ridiculous sometimes the amount these airlines have to pay just to be in business. Mr. Krisaligbe mentioned something about corporate governance and actually mentioned aero contractors. Some time ago, I was appointed acting head of commercials for aero contractors. And we looked at the situation and said, okay, all the airlines, what do they do every day? Wake up in the morning, go to Abuja, go to Port Harcourt, all the airlines in Nigeria. The number of traveling passengers are not increasing. Well, there could be a spike during Christmas, Eid al-Fitr, Easter, whatever. There could be a little spike because families are now involved. But the number of traveling passengers are the same. So these airlines are struggling for the same number of people and all charging roughly about the same fares for all these routes. Now, we said, oh, if we had a national carrier, this is what the national carrier teaches the other private airlines to do. So let's expand and open a route. Let's go to Dakar, Senegal. I'm mentioning Dakar, Senegal because that was what we wanted to do. NCAA came up with a charge of 10 million naira. 10 million naira just to issue a certificate that says, oh, aero contractors is competent to do that route. What kind of charge is that? We have not even carried one passenger. How many passengers will we carry on that route to make up the 10 million naira? And these charges are like that. They're like that. So from the beginning, the airlines are in problems. It is true the airlines are not run like corporate entities. The owners do whatever they like. And I would like to mention that the airline I fly for right now is not run that way. And that is why we are not having the kind of problems that the others are having. But we really do have issues in the country. This is the only country in the world that you plan a flight, you have regulations about how much fuel you can take on a flight. In Nigeria, you not only have those regulated fuel in your tanks, you also need to buy additional fuel to put on board just in case you arrive at an airport and the airport is closed because some VIP, i.e. maybe the president of the country or his vice, they are using the airport at that time. So 20 airplanes are in the sky, holding, trying to land, but they can't do so because the president or vice president is coming in to land or about to take off. These things cost a lot of money. But because on the day of flight, it means nothing, the airlines don't make this calculation. Over the years, they run into billions. Look, I know the life, the safety, the security of the president is very, very paramount. But it's no more paramount than the lives of the average Nigerian. The security people need to find a solution to these particular problems and bring it up. Why would 20 airplanes be in the sky because the president wants to land? I have flown airplanes into so many countries, including African countries. I have landed my airplane directly behind a president of another country. The president went to their VIP area. I taxied the airplane to the commercial area. I wasn't held up in the skies. And this issue is one thing that only Nigeria is the only one still doing it. These things should stop. It should stop because the amount of money the airlines need to operate with is mind-boggling. Now, let me come to NCAA again. I'm mentioning NCAA because I have a lot of colleagues and senior colleagues in NCAA now. From our discussions, it appears to me the career civil servants will not let change occur in this country. That is the reason why we have a situation where the charges are astronomical. How much money really do these airlines make? In 1987, I was very happy as a young co-pilot flying for the first time into Kenya. And when we got to Kenya, it was a flight that we did, a cargo flight, that we overnight in Kenya for a day and a half. And when we were going, my captain threw the papers at me for me to go around and make necessary payments. And the parking fee on my aircraft, a Boeing 707 at that time, not a small airplane, was $60 a day in Kenya, in Nairobi, Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. $60 a day. We're in 2017. For that category of aeroplane, that weight, that parking fee is still the same today. If you go to Jomo Kenyatta Airport, it's a beehive of activities 24/7. If you come to our airports in Nigeria, by 11 o'clock in the night, they're dead. Why? Nobody stays in Nigeria. The parking fee as issued by FAN for that category of aeroplane, even at that time, was $200 per hour. Which airline will survive paying $4,800 a day for parking? So, our agencies never set out to encourage aviation. Our agencies came up with this brilliant idea: aviation costs money. So whoever wants to go into aviation must have a bagload of money. So they bring up the charges, and they bring up more charges. I always ask myself one question. Like Mr. Aligbe just said, is it the egg or beef that came first, or the chicken? Because if these airlines don't exist, these agencies don't exist. It's simple. So we need to go back to the drawing board. What do we really want? Nigeria today is the most raped country in the world. I use the word rape because rape is a very, very bad thing. We know how every country in the world views it. But this country today, every airline imaginable flies into this country. And we are talking of foreign exchange. Why will Nigerians continue to patronize all these foreign airlines when we can have viable airlines, 2, 3, or 4, going to different parts of the world? And I can assure you of one thing: Nigerians love to fly Nigeria. We can't have flag carriers. We can't have national carrier. Then why are we in the business? Why are we in the business? We might as well just close up and say, in Nigeria, there is no aviation. Because that may well be it. Mr. Mukhtar mentioned NCAT. I'm a product of NCAT. But what is the use of Nigerian pilots and engineers looking for job even within Nigeria, and Nigerian airlines prefer to go bring foreigners? So we need to go back to the drawing board. That is just it. Whatever that is, we need to go back to it.
Right, Captain Benson Ipomosa, thank you very much there for your insights. Just to return to our Abuja studios before we bring in the DG of NCAA to respond to the slew of issues that you and other guests have raised. Captain Roland Iyaye, let's deal with this, because you were already getting into the range of taxes and levies that the airlines and the airline operators have to pay. Can we frame this around ease of doing business? Because the federal government at the moment is concerned about ease of doing business. How is it easy to do business in the aviation industry, and who sets all these charges? You know, we're hearing $10 million to issue a certificate of approval. Is it an insurance certificate or what? Captain Iyayi.
Thank you very much. Essentially, you know, it's unfortunate that, again, we have to go back to the NCA. The way the industry is, we have only one regulator. The regulator is the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority. Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria is a service provider. Nigerian Airspace Management Agency is a service provider. Similarly, the ground handling companies. Now, there is a regulation which states that for any of the service providers to increase tariff, there has to be a stakeholder consultation. And upon consultation, that agreement or consensus has to be ratified by the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority. But we haven't seen that in the last 10 years. I'm sorry. The service providers increase tariff at will, all because they say, oh, we need to increase IGR. And by that, who do we tax? The airlines. So at the end of the day, right at the nose of the industry, you have the airline, and they feel the heat. Now, I'll give you an example. NAMA, in recent times, was in the news. 6.8 or 9 billion apparently was taken out of the coffers of NAMA by a couple of top management staff. When I was in NAMA, the entire budget of a year for NAMA was about 6 billion. But between 2007 and the current date, as a result of increasing IGR, all these service providers have they ended up increasing tariff, arbitrarily, if I may add, to the detriment of the airlines, because they end up having to pay. But who regulated that? Nobody. Because again, the CAA is also part of the IGR regime. So ultimately, the airlines suffer. Now, the 6-point-something billion that was stolen out of NAMA was paid for by the airlines. Because however you look at it, NAMA generated that income from the airlines. Now, there's a 5% service charge on every airline ticket accruable to the NCAA. That 5% is shared between the NCAA and some of the service providers. So when you look at it, passengers pay 5%, which the airlines have to remit to the NCAA. The airlines have to now pay again to NAMA, to FAN for services. But that 5% essentially was to cover those costs. So there we have a double taxation.
Double taxation, that's right.
Okay? Then we now talk about all the issues of the charges of the NCAA for different things, aircraft inspections, certification, and the rest of it. Yes, the NCAA needs to earn income, but we also have the 5% tariff from the airline tickets. So when you aggregate all of this, it would appear to me that we have double taxation on the airlines, because it doesn't happen to the ground handling companies. I mean, the only people who make money in the aviation sector are the service providers, not the airlines, because the airlines have ended up to be guinea pigs, particularly in Nigeria. So we need to really, I mean, as Captain Ikmawasa said, we need to review, drastically all these taxes and find out, is it really necessary? Because the thing is, if 6 billion can be stolen from NAMA and they still survive, then it tells me that there's a surplus of 6 billion somewhere that they don't need. That's what I interpret it to mean. Except, of course, NAMA is owing taxes or, owing salaries or whatever it is, which is not the case. So it means that the airlines, system is being overtaxed by the government through the agencies. So we need to look at that. Now, when you talk about the issue of how it is, all of these things have happened over time, it boils down to whether or not there's oversight on the issue of regulations. The regulation, like I said, exists, but is it enforced? It's part of a problem. So if the NCA would look at the fact that a ground handling company would increase tariff without consultation, then they should say, no, you can't do that. But that is not happening. So these are issues So we cannot take one element in isolation and say, oh, this is why airlines fail. Airlines are failing. Yes, we can talk about corporate governance. We can talk about recklessness of management or whatever it is. But there's also dereliction of duty on the part of some government agencies, and that is very fundamental.
All right, Captain Mukhtar, what's your response to all of this?
Thank you very much. Let me start with the charges. First of all, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority is 100% funded from the 5% that Roland mentioned, the ticket sales and cargo charges, including charter services. Now, that is meant to take care of the salaries, training allowances, surveillance that we have to mount to ensure that our safety and security regulations are enforced or are being kept. Having said that, because we don't collect anything from the federal government, and it is done to ensure that aviation is continued to be sustained, and that is why that was introduced, and it's through the Civil Aviation Regulation, Civil Aviation Act of 2006. Now, there are other charges which are recovery charges. Those recovery charges are strictly recovery charges. They're exact service that is required or is demanded by the operator or service provider. Strictly, it's no money extra made. And all those charges, as I mentioned, the other airlines too are going through it. The same thing, the foreign airlines. The same charges, and they're operating, and they're still flying, and so on. So I don't think the charges are what they said they are. And currently, we are reviewing those charges in consultation with stakeholders.
Downwards or upwards?
Well, we want the committee to look at everything holistically, and all stakeholders are being given opportunity to be part of the review. So whatever is the consensus will be what will be applied, whether it is upward or downward. Don't forget, if we tie our charges to dollar, because dollar has been changing, or the foreign exchange has been changing. Somebody mentioned that the same amount is being paid in one place for over several years and so on. But the dollar has virtually not changed from that time to now. It is local currencies that changes, And as for double taxation, I don't say double taxation, but I'm sure the committee will come up with something which includes all the stakeholders, not only the Civil Aviation Authority, not only the service providers, but even the operators and so on. Everybody is going to be involved in that, or they have been involved already, because the committee is already in place.
When is the committee turning its reports according to your schedule?
We hope any time from next week, end of next week.
Are you concerned, Captain Nipo also raised the point that, look, a number of airlines choose not to sleep over at our airports because of the prohibitive charges. Is that a source of worry to you?
Well, I'm not aware any airline has said they are not going to stay over because of that. Yes, there were issues of fuel some time back, and that is being addressed. We have promises from the relevant stakeholders that aviation fuel will be very soon, will start production in Nigeria for availability and also for pricing. Most of them choose at that time to fly out to other places to pick fuel and so on. Also, it's convenient for them to stay over night. But as I said, we are looking holistically at the whole charges, and all hands are on deck. All stakeholders are involved in this, and whatever is agreed is what is going to be implemented.
Okay, but thank you very much, Blessing. I'd like us, because we are pressed for time. I mean, we have 6 very well informed and experienced guests on the program, speaking to us here in Abuja as well as at our Lagos Network studios. I would like to return to Lagos. Gentlemen, there's a question that I would like us to address, which is this. I'm sure that this is a source of concern to some Nigerians. At a time when you are looking for investors, you ask yourself why it seems to be challenging for us to get foreign investors into our airline industry. I mean, when you fly out, you see the aircraft of other airlines, whether in the US or in Europe, you see, they are all like birds, perched at the airports. Why has it been so difficult to attract foreign investors directly into into our aviation industry. Who takes this, Captain Iponsa or Chris Aligbe?
Well, thank you, Wilfred. First and foremost, they look at the operating environment. Operating environment. Operating environment. Operating environment. Two, and say there are challenges. If this happens to a Nigerian, it will happen to a foreigner. Unfortunately, they did not know that we started on a wrong note, that when MM2 came in, like others, he was sitting on a framework void. There were no frameworks for it to sit down. It was individual decisions, beautiful as that airport is, but that affected it. And so the challenges today was the way it came into being. That's the whole argument. But people will see it from outside and say, wait a minute, what is this? That happened to Virgin Nigeria. One of the most sordid arrangements entered into in our country, an arrangement that siphoned so many millions of dollars out of this country. But it failed. Branson went out there, started carrying funny campaign about the country. That's one. So people look at this. So the first thing to do, like I say, let the National Assembly come into this. They have a major responsibility to put the frameworks in place. If the frameworks are in place, before any investor comes, you will look at your framework and to see whether his investment is going to be protected, to know where he will seek redress when it happens. That's one. Secondly, we should do things openly. Like I said, we are talking about why didn't AMCON advertise the issue of management? National carrier is coming, it must be open. If you do anything in clandestinity, it will fail. All the 10 failed national carriers, I wrote an article on it, clandestinity was one of the problems that led to their failure. They didn't even come up. So whatever you are going to do, you must look at that. You have people in the industry, don't think that you can stay under the table and come with the concessioning is coming, it has to be openly advertised, and then people will know. If you look at other countries, take magazines, professional magazines, they publish what is happening in the country, whoever is bidding for an airport, how much that airport will cost, what will be the feature of that airport. Today it is 5 million. By the end of the concession period, 20 years, whatever, it should be a 40 million or 30 million airport. These things are open, and we don't do it in our country. But we see somewhere, we want to do it under the table. We want to use third-rate professionals to do what we want to do. It just will not work. But because maybe this is, because of time, my last contribution, what we should do in the industry. The government should look at the airline industry, aviation, airline subsector, and declare it an infant industry. Because it's an infant industry. Look at all the indices. It's an infant industry. Under this infant industry, government should look at the agencies. Yes, the government is putting pressure on the agencies, on FAN, on anybody. Even NCA is not an IGR agency. But governments from National Assembly, from everywhere, they want them to generate funds. That's another organization that generates funds. So what is going to happen is that when we look at this entire thing, the agencies are not surviving on the payment of Nigerian airlines. If the agencies are not surviving on that, the government can as well reduce those payments maybe by 50% as part of the benefits of an infant industry. If we do not take a holistic view on the challenges, whether it's VAT, whether it's fuel, whether it's charges, parking fee, overflight charges, if we don't take a holistic view and consider that it's an infant industry and give it an infant industry status for a period of 10 years, if a period of 10 years you cannot grow out of infancy, then you are suffering infantilism and it will congenital, you die. That's what we should do. Government should stop looking at this industry as private sector driven, because when it happens to the nose, the eye will cry, and we are all going to cry. Government owes the operators responsibility, government owes the industry responsibility, government owes all of us responsibility. I'm not saying put the money. Government hasn't put in the money there, but create a conducive environment, declare it an infant industry, and give all the perks of the infant industry that we decided collectively sitting down. And that is my own take on that. Thank you.
All right, Chris Aligbe, thank you very much. My name actually is Kingsley Osadolo. I've heard you call me Wilfred many times. Wilfred is one of the big potatoes. It's not on set with us at the moment. Well, just to indicate, of course, we appreciate the last comment, which we will take as your closing thought on this. Let's hear from the other guests with you in the Lagos studios, Captain Ikwamusa and Okunuga, as well as the comrade. What are your closing thoughts? How do we get to sanitize and grow this industry, as well as, of course, attracting competent foreign investors, not just those guys with the portfolios?
Yes, thank you very much. I think I will key into the comments of the DG NCA on the formation of a committee that will look into all the bottlenecks and what they perceive and what we all perceive are the problems in the aviation industry by all the taxes or rates or charges. It is very key, and that is why foreign investors will not want to come here, and that is why domestic operators too are dying. I take, for example, I was reading somewhere that between January and September last year, I think the DGNC gave that statistics. 2015, about over 200,000 flights operated. And in 2016, the same January to September, the thing dropped to 130,000. That is very, very drastic. So we just have to do something that we attract people, just like Chris Aligbe also mentioned. Treat this industry as an infant industry and give it what it takes to allow it to grow, so that for the period you will allow it, let's see those who, I know even if they bring these charges to $1, the airline that will not pay. We should take note of that. But whoever will not measure up to expectation at a time given, we have to pack up. Thank you.
All right, Captain Ikwamusa, let's get your closing thoughts.
I think everything has been said that needs to be said. But we really are a peculiar nation. Aviation in the last few years have been so brutalized that I can't imagine when I started my career in '77 that Nigeria will become like this. We took perfectly good airports, perfectly good terminal buildings. In the name of transformation agenda, we destroyed them. And we spent so much money trying to build stupid terminal buildings that other countries use to build whole city airports. And we messed up our airports. We wanted to renovate our airports. We ended up with crap. Murtala Mohammed International is a shadow of itself. Port Harcourt, anytime I go to Port Harcourt, I weep. I cry for this nation because I just cannot understand who we are, the kind of people that we do things that we've done. Yola Airport, the other day, it rained a little bit. Part of the roof went a few nautical miles away from the building. The same thing with Benin Airport, the same thing. Look, we need to go back to the beginning. Everybody says we need to go back to the beginning. And if it means, please, DGNCA, DG NAMA, DG FAN, we need to look at the Nigerian companies and say, we want Nigeria to grow. So first, let's reduce charges. It's okay for the DG to say, foreign airlines pay these charges. It's easy for British Airways to pay something equivalent of $500. I can assure you it's not easy for a Nigerian carrier to pay that money. So we need to help each other so that we can have viable airlines, so that we can have airlines that can now go out and go to cities of the world in order to bring foreign exchange to this country. Thank you.
All right, Captain Iponsa, thank you very much. Comrade Ahmadu, let's also get your closing thoughts very briefly because we are only a few nautical miles to our destination on this program.
Well, for me, sincerely, I just want to comment on an issue that came on here. The issue of the bilateral system. The Nigerian government invests a lot of money in discussing BASAs. Airlines are designated and they don't consummate their designations. And that has created excess capacity, pressure on foreign carriers. And because Nigerians are the ones involved, they need to have travel options. You don't have any option than to increase frequencies for them. So the thing is that our carriers have to sit up and utilize their designation so that this thing about capital flight, there's nothing like capital flight. If you are not doing your own, the other foreign carriers are doing their own. They have a right to repatriate their funds. That is settled. Secondly, we talk about concession of airports and as a way forward. If we look around us, Ghana, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, all these countries, there's an option. There's an option to concession. Airports are airports are security infrastructures. Government must have hand in airports. And that's why you see they are transforming into airport companies. And that transformation has opened up a window for foreign direct investment into most of those countries. So let us look at it. We are talking about cost. If we concession airports, we will be paying, airlines will be paying higher costs, I can assure you that. So let government look at these things and take the best option that is best for this country.
It is Hamadu, Mr. Chris Saligbe, Captain Benson Posa, as well as Mr. Andrew Okunoga. Gentlemen, we'd like to say thank you very much for participating in the program today. We appreciate your comments and we look forward to having a sanitized aviation sector. Thank you very much. Okay, back to us in the Abuja studio. Captain Yair, let's take your closing comments.
Well, I think where we are at this point, we need to have the government take a second look at all the issues we've talked about today. But I think importantly, beyond all that we've said, it is important to develop or evolve a framework that would consider all these issues and take cognizance of what is required for a viable industry. And that should be part of that framework that will be, put together and put in place to be run through a period of the next 10 years maybe. Because as we speak, there's absolutely no airline in the country, a domestic carrier as it were, that can survive the harsh realities of the hostile environment in which we operate and expect to be not just viable. Now we talk about being successful internationally. It's not possible. So those are the issues that need to be looked at. And government has a major role to play, considering the fact that aviation is pivotal to the success or otherwise of any government project.
All right.
All right, Captain Mukhtar, so much have been laid at your doorstep.
Thank you very much. What we are appealing for is cooperation for all stakeholders to move the industry to the next level. Having said that, I have to make one observation. The committee has already been put in place. It's been working. It's not just being set up, but it's already in motion. And we expect the outcome by end of next week. That's the committee on the review of those charges. And one thing I think it was Captain Ikonwosa mentioned about the Nigerian pilots and engineers being without job. Unfortunately, the operators are not helping matters because they go and buy aircraft, they register it in a foreign land. And,
well, perhaps those are areas NCA should actually look into. I'm sure it's not just crying wolf for nothing's sake. All right, Captain Usman Mukhtar, Director General, Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, NCA, thank you very much for joining us on the program this morning. We'd also like to thank Captain Roland Yayi, former Managing Director, Nigerian Airspace Management Agency in Lima. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, Kingsley, it's love is in the air. There's a touch of red on you, but there is a touch of red as well in the story we're about to take from entertainment.
Absolutely. This is Valentine's Day, and let's go over now to our entertainment desk.
Love is a feeling of commitment, feeling of emotions. towards or for somebody?
Love is a feeling from the heart. It's a feeling that you have for someone from the heart.
It's about thinking about the welfare, the well-being of somebody else, even at your own expense.
Variations of what love is from a cross-section of Nigerians, a form of affection vital for human existence and invariably celebrated on February 14, known as Valentine's Day. Who defied the Roman law to institute the virtue of love. Though there are many sides to this, the essence still remains unique. Through the years, February 14 has significantly transcended culture, religion, and beliefs. Today, all over the world, the ambience of Valentine is notably characterized with different symbols and love songs in honor of the saint who is believed to have died for love. For Nigerians, Valentine's Day is observed.
Very nice polo, and myself, I bought a shoe, a red shoe for myself.
Reach out the people that don't have.
How about we do something that is a bit more of a lasting legacy? How about we do something that can give you both mental and physical health?
As Nigerians join the rest of the world in marking this day, it is believed that the core essence of love will transform the society for the greater good.
Space for us to actually thrive in. My name is Blessing Abu. We'll see you again tomorrow.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join Blessing in thanking you for starting your day with us. We wish you the very best for the rest of the day. As she said, we're back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning.